Today gamers, we're going to be going over some more Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and this time I'll be going over what I believe are the best and most powerful weapons and pieces of gear in the game. Perfect for anyone trying to devise an amazing build for that endgame content. So if you're after a powerful setup, then this is definitely a video for you. Now first off, and I'm not going to go over these too much because I think probably a lot of people will know how good these are, but we're going to be going over the Bane sets. These come in 3 different tiers, tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3, giving you different variants on their buffs. The first set, Bane's Infamy, with 1 piece on, each melee hit on an enemy has 50% chance to craze it and 50% chance to drop grenade ammo. 2 pieces, critical hits on crazed enemies have 100% chance to spawn a rage zone, and once you go into this zone it's going to give you 100% extra damage for 20 seconds. This can happen every 5 seconds. And 3 pieces, Bane's Rage now also increases your grenade damage by 200%, and each enemy killed with a grenade whilst Bane's Rage is active refreshes Bane's Rage and adds 33% chance of dropping a grenade ammo. An absolute nuking machine and probably the very best setup for a grenade build in the game. For its tier 2, Bane's Wrath, this one's slightly different. 1 piece will give you craze duration by 10 seconds, and enemies you craze now deal 20% more damage for each 1% health they are missing, and slowly build up craze when they're dealing damage. For 2 pieces, you deal 1% more damage to each enemy for 1% of their health that's missing, and a 3 piece, when you kill a crazed enemy or an enemy you crazed kills another enemy, you trigger a stack of Bane's Wrath. This lasts for a minute and it increases the damage massively by 50% each time, all the way up to 750%. A great little damage buff and works in almost any build. Over to the Bane's Fury pieces, and this will be once you've gone quite high up in the mastery levels. 1 piece is going to give you one of the best effects, and this you deal 4% more damage to an enemy for each 1% of their health that's missing. At 2 pieces, critical hits on an enemy below 50% health trigger Bane's Fury. This increases damage by 50% and damage to crazed enemies by 50% for 60 seconds. Each stack of Fury adds a 5% chance to cause the enemy to explode on death and crazed enemies within 10 meters. This can stack up to 15 times, again allowing for some really high damage. At 3 pieces, all enemies hit with a Traversal attack become crazed, and each enemy killed whilst Bane's Fury is active generates 10% Traversal attack. This is really good, perfect for anyone who wants to be in those Traversal attacks very often, considering you're invulnerable in it, makes it very nice for that endgame high level content. Now over to the ranged weapons, and the first one I'm going to be going over is going to be the Black Mask weapons. When I'm talking about all of these weapons and pieces of gear, most times it will be the talents that's actually on them, but some of the talents do actually work better on some weapons depending on what they do. The Black Mask Bulletstorm is one of the very most powerful weapons in the game, and any Black Mask weapon in general is, as it comes with each enemy hit with the firearm receives Black Mask's mark. Applying this to 3 different enemies within 6 seconds causes all marked enemies to trigger a fiery explosion that burns nearby enemies. This means you can just spray and pray, you can absolutely melt everything. Don't worry about aiming for the head, don't worry about your crits, just try to apply that fire and you will do a massive amount of damage. The only problem, they are going to be adjusting this soon, because at the moment it's scaling ridiculously off the charts and it's kind of the meta currently in the game. This will be adjusted, but it will still be a strong pick on any weapon. Also, a nice thing, the villain synergy with this, when you mix it up with one of those Bane pieces, you're now going to have the true face of Fury, harvesting enemies, and now has a 100% chance of dropping a grenade ammo, and also increases grenade damage by 100% for 20 seconds. Again, perfect for anyone who likes a grenade build. Next up, and we're going to be going over the free refills. The talent on this weapon is just amazing. Every 8 critical hits with this firearm will cause it to instantly reload. This weapon also has 50% increased critical hit chance. If you're going for a crit build and you're going for a firepower build that you want to constantly go, for example something on a minigun, this can be top notch. Just make sure you've got a lot of damage on your weapons, because for some reason I've seen this one drop the weapon damage a little bit sometimes on some guns, so try to get that as high as possible, and this one will be a great pick for anyone after that crit chance. Over to the stack deck. Anytime you can put this on another weapon that applies a lot of damage in a fast pace, for example a shotgun, the talent for this, the firearm's damage is reduced by 50%, but each successive hit on an enemy with this firearm causes it to take 15% more damage from all sources. An absolutely boss melting weapon if you're after taking out the biggest, toughest guys. Put this on, have a really tasty way to take them out afterwards, for example swapping to another weapon, using a grenade, using your suicide strike, whatever you want to go into, and then they're going to take that additional damage which is going to stay in place on them. Over to one that I think is probably a little bit underutilised, but I really like this one, and that's going to be the armour piercing. This weapon can damage scavengers, troopers and bombers through their personal shields, and can also do full damage through the armour of corrupted tanks and choppers. It absolutely melts everything. This is such a good perk. Not many people seem to be taking advantage of this because it doesn't give any additional damage, but it does just make your life a whole bunch easier. So if you wanted to put on a secondary, I could definitely see this working in a lot of kits. Over to the melee, and we're going to be kicking it off with the Two Faces Persuader. This one, every melee hit on a crazed enemy has a 50% chance to drop a live grenade or grenade ammo at the enemy's feet. Remember, because it's a two-face one, it does also have that additional synergy that we saw earlier on the minigun if you're going to be using it with a Bane set. This one is a really good one to use. Grenades are very strong in this. I'd say it's probably a top tier pick in most of the builds currently. Over to a more safe one, and we're going to have the Make It Rain. Now, whenever you cause a melee attack on an enemy that can be countered, it's going to drop 5 shield pickups. This is very often. There are a lot of enemies that are going to be doing this. If you find yourself going into your melee very often, you'll probably find yourself picking these up without even realising, and 5 shield pickups is absolutely massive, pretty much generating overshield each time as long as you've got the right setup. So if you're after something that gives you a bit of survivability, a little bit more tankiness, this might be one you want to look at. Over to the Haymaker, and each time you craze an enemy, there is a 50% chance they will become harvestable. Again, an absolutely amazing way to keep yourself alive. You're going to get shields again, it's going to be much tankier, you're going to be able to invest in harvesting a lot more if you've got this on, so it's just a great pick for melee if you need a little bit of safety going on in your build. Next up, and we're going to be going over the grenades. One of the most fun things in the game, big old AoEs going off, massive amounts of damage, and just a lot of fun to see in some builds. First one we're going to be looking at is going to be the paint bomb. Each enemy hit by the grenade explosion now increases your critical hit damage by 53% up to a maximum of a certain amount. I've seen this go a little bit higher than this. I think it can go up to 250 if I remember correctly, and that's for 20 seconds. 20 seconds of that amount of damage in the right setup can really see your damage skyrocket, so if you're going for a crit build, this may well be one you want to invest in. Next is my personal favourite in the game. I absolutely love this and I find myself putting on pretty much every one of my characters, and that's going to be Bane. Limited to carrying just one grenade at a time, but each one of these grenades does 500% damage, and the icing on the cake, it has 100% bigger explosion radius. Now, when you're topping this up, you can actually adjust it so that it's got about 22 or 24 radius, I believe, maybe even a little bit more if you've got a perfect setup. And because of how much damage it actually does, even if you haven't got any multipliers on your build, you're going to absolutely nuke everything. Perfect for clearing those small lads, getting them out of the way so that you can adjust for the tougher enemies. For the third and last one for the grenades, my pick's going to be this one just here, the slot machine. Each enemy hit by this grenade drops either a shield pickup, less potent damage buff, or ammo. I found this one to just be a great all-rounder. It really helps you out and you don't find yourself running out of much with this. Also, the additional buff to your damage is really nice to see. So if you're after a bit of survivability, you never want to run out of ammo, and you want a bit of extra damage, this may well be a top pick for you. Over to the shields, and we're going to be kicking it off with the Bane shield. This time I'm going to be showing you the tier 2, but I believe they all do exactly the same, and that's while there are 4 or more crazed enemies within 20 meters of you, you deal 100% more damage and take 50% less damage. This is just a great perk to have on anything and really does help you out, gives you damage, gives you a bit of survivability, and if you can manage to get a master version of this, you've also got a high amount of capacity on your shield, making it an absolute monster. My top pick for survivability has to be the turtle shell. This is just great if you want tankiness, you want survivability, you don't like falling over, this is going to be the one for you. It has the highest current capacity in the game, and its talent, when you hit at least one enemy with an enhanced traversal attack, you're immune to all damage for 5 seconds. The duration is increased by 2 seconds for each enemy killed, up to a maximum of 15 seconds. However, please be aware this is one that they're going to be changing soon, and I believe because they're trying to take as much invulnerable out of the game as possible, it's going to go down to 90% damage reduction. But even at that, it's going to be the tankiest one in the game, so if you want survivability, this is going to be your go-to choice. Another great one, and one that would be a top pick in any fire build, is going to be the Heatwave's Molten Skin. Each enemy you burn that isn't already burning makes you invulnerable to damage for 2 seconds, and returns 10% of the damage received back to the attacker. Each additional enemy burned increases the duration by 2 seconds up to a maximum of 30 seconds. This one is currently a little bit broken in some builds and it is going to get an adjustment. Again, I believe it's going to go down to around about 90% damage reduction rather than the invulnerable. but with those burn builds this can still be a top pick, as you'll have durability and you'll be giving them additional damage as you're creating that burn effect going on. The only thing with this, most times I've found it has a slightly lower capacity, so once the adjustments taken effect I don't know if it'll be quite as good as the other two I've mentioned before. Onto Power Trip, and an absolutely amazing one to get your traversal attack up, so if you want to be doing that almost constantly and you're able to pull off quite a lot of crits, this is going to be ideal. While your shield is overcharged, critical hits generate 20% traversal attack resource. The only thing with this, the capacity isn't that high, so I'd say you're definitely going to want to make sure you've got this in the mastery version, otherwise you're going to take a little bit of a tumble from time to time. However, if you can make this work and you've got an ideal setup on, you could almost definitely have your traversal attack up almost constant, giving you a lot of invulnerability because whenever you're pulling that off you're going to be immune to damage. Jumping over to the traversal mods, and my top pick has got to be the Turtle Steel Force Conduit. This one is just amazing. Each second spent standing still adds a stack of Steel Force Conduit, and it just means you're going to be getting a lot of extra damage mitigation. The more you stand still, the more damage reduction you'll get, up to 50%, 5 per stack. If you're moving, which is what you're more inclined to be using this for, you're going to be getting additional damage by 50% per stack, all the way up to 10 times, so 500% extra damage. Over to Hat Trick, and this one is going to be on Speedster Surprise because I've got it on Boomerang, but it works on every character. Each enemy hit by your traversal attack increases the combo build up by 100% for 15 seconds. If you're struggling to get your combo meter up, you find yourself not unlocking all of your perks in your skill tree because you're never really at that topped up 50 cap, then this one will be one of the best ones you can put on. Now another one that I've only just started using, but I think this one could work quite well in a lot of builds, is going to be the Best Defense. Hitting 3 or more enemies with your traversal attack now fully recharges your shield. If you've got one of those top end shields, say for example the Turtle, this can really help out, but you do have to kind of time your traversal attacks and make sure you're not just spamming them at inopportune moments. In the right setup though, this can be a lot of fun to see and give you a nice amount of survivability. Over to the Neck Bomb, and we've got Hugo's Strange Specialisation. After inflicting 5 enemies with the same affliction, you are now immune to damage from enemies afflicted by that affliction, and that's going to last 20 seconds. As far as I'm aware, when the next update comes out, they're not going to be touching this one, so it'll be one of the few ways left in the game to get some invulnerable in the build, making it probably a little bit better than it is even currently now. Definitely a top pick for anyone who's going high up in those mastery ranks. Dr. Crits is one that is amazing. I have only just started trying this one as well, but it works ridiculously good in some builds. Critical hits are now going to regenerate 2% shield, so it's not going to be worth putting this on unless you're using a fast firing weapon. If you're using something like a shotgun or a minigun, this can be ridiculous for regen, especially if you're holding down that trigger and you've got constant ammo, but if you find yourself using a slower paced weapon, this one's probably one to avoid. Finally, for the lucky charms, and I'm going to kick it straight off with Jinx's Unlucky Coin. You gain 750% increased damage to a specific affliction for 20 seconds, and this effect rotates through the available afflictions. So there's 4 in the game currently, you're going to have that up for 20 seconds, however it will be down for 60 seconds. But the great thing about this, you also gain 250% increased damage to afflicted enemies as standard. That's a really nice amount that's just there constantly, so the other 750% is just kind of kicking it up a notch whenever it takes effect. Over to Merlin's Token, and this one is a complete counter shot beast. Counter explosions now deal 200% more damage with a 50% increased radius. Each critical counter hit will give a 50% chance to give shield harvest to enemies within the counter explosion. One of the best things about this though, and I hope I'm correct with this because I had to look it up on the internet, this is the only piece of gear in the game that doesn't seem to want to drop for me. Just let me know in the comments. I've been told this one gives 100% crit chance when you craze an enemy. So now it means you can spec into damage, you don't have to worry about crit, as this is going to give that as a synergy. Like I said, hopefully I'm right with this one, as I'm having absolutely no joy farming it. However, I have tried this one right here, the Hit and Run, and this is another one that works amazing if you can get a fast firing weapon and you've invested a lot into crit. Now your critical hits also grant 2% traversal attack each time. This can be ridiculously good in the right setup, with the right skill tree, with the right characters, and can often mean you have your traversal up a couple of seconds after you've just used it. Nigh on invulnerable, a lot of fun to see, and definitely a very fun charm overall. Last but definitely not least on our list, and we've got the Death Proof charm. This one is going to be your I want 100% safety net just in case, because attacks that would usually kill you instead now revive you with 100% health and 50% shield. This can only occur once every minute, but that's still pretty decent overall and could be great if you're going to be doing some hardcore content like the ones where you're just not allowed any failures as a little bit of a safety net. Overall, I'd say that these are pretty much the cream of the crop, the best things you can go for, weapons, gear, the talents that you should be looking for on them, but there are quite a few in the game, so if there's anything you think I've missed off, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. But as always, there'll be a lot more content from me. For now, take care, I'll see you on the next day.